I presume that you have been watching the videos that College Board offer. They seem to be good, but I'd like to also talk about my own lessons, especially because I want to be able to help you answer these questions. So let's go understand the material that I put on the website. So if you click on the website, it should take you to right here. And this is pretty much a summary of what's in the book. You should have a PDF, right? Let's take a look at, make sure that you're aware of everything that's available. Here's the videos, here's the source code, and then we have a few things right here and one example. One, not example, but certainly an assignment. All right, let's take a look at the material that I had put on the website. Um, so when it comes to complex concepts in computer science and not in computer science, let me rephrase that because that was a very bad call. And in Java programming, inheritance is belongs in the complex concepts, but it's not really that complex. It's actually very straightforward because think about how could you make classes that also have the ability to have uh, different degrees of detail. So you can have a class that is very specific of uh, some tasks that are similar to others, but then you want something that could be common to all those classes, and that would be the parent class. So what I did is pretty much follow, I talk about inheritance the way you would see it with the directional arrows over here. So this is a more detailed class of what the parent class will look like. So many times we like to start from the top. We have a parent class that has the most basic features, and then we have the child class that has more specific, very much uh, uh, kind of the color and the tone of what that specific child might look like. And in this case, the book is definitely one of the best examples because we have many different kind of books, and some of them could be dictionaries, it could be novels, it could be all different kind of things. So when we go and look at each specific child, we know that there are differences between them, but there are similarities that all have. And in this case, a dictionary is a book, so it's going to have pages. It's going to have how you can set the pages and how you can get the pages. So that's a very general idea. So that would be the parent class. And then the child class will be more specific of what it does. And then you have, what is it that a dictionary has? Well, it has definitions. Then you have other things over here like compute ratio, set definitions, get definitions. I mean, certainly you can do other things to it, but this is probably the most basic of all of them. And it's a good example in terms of the fact that they're all books, and then you have so many different categories of books. So we can say the categories of books will be the children of the parent class that is a book. Here is the actual driver. Take a look at the arrows. The arrow has an arrow tip and it's dash. That's because there is an association between the two of them. That means that uses or depends on. When it comes to associations, we're not going to spend too much time on how that works. You can always go over here, right? The UML basics. And let's do a quick review of what that is. Here are the things that you're probably going to use. The inheritance is a solid line with a closed arrow tip. We are not looking at interfaces. College Board doesn't test that anymore. We're going to use it later on and a couple of times that we're going to talk about the comparable interface, but no more than that. Take a look at the difference between the two of them. But what you saw in the previous example, it was a dash line with an open arrow tip, and that talks about dependencies. If you get more into it, you see that dependencies include other things, like, for example, let me see here, take a look at this. And that's when you have aggregates. And so it's like it's using instance fields that are actually coming from other classes. And the interchange could be, um, more, a little bit more sophisticated, if you want to say it. So some of the code that I put over here and the UMLs associated with the code are pretty much examples coming from the book. One thing that I think you have been using in the past, especially when you did the goodies project, is the UML Dino, which I think it helps a lot set all those things in place. Mm, Remember, UML has to look pretty much like this. This is the most basic you should have, which is a rectangle divided in three parts. The first one is the class name. The next one you have the instance fields. Attributes are instance fields, if I had to remind you, that is important to know. And then the operations, as they call it over here, are the methods, which we also call them behaviors. Here's an example in which we have over here the driver using a class object over here. Here's the same thing, but here you have a different interesting situation. We have two classes over here. So take a look at the attribute over here. The instance field of the class is an object of the class XYZ. Okay? So that can happen. That is very possible. All right, so that was a very quick review of UML. And so let's go back to inheritance, because UMLs are really, really important. UML diagrams, I should say, are very important in inheritance, because just like when you did designing classes and you have multiple classes interacting with each other, you needed that UML diagram to see how they all were connected. So in inheritance, you're going to have the same situation. You want to see how the child and the parents are related, and then you have the driver. So this is actually a very typical picture. Here is the class. Actually, it's a class, yes, but it's actually the driver. This is main, and here is dictionary is the parent class. And the parent class has the most basic things, because if you look at the UML diagram, the class UML is very simplistic. Then you had the book. Class book is the parent class. And what does it have? The instance field, which is pages, is a built-in type. As you can see, the book is using protected, but protected is no part of the college AP curriculum, and you don't have to worry about it. And according to, as a matter of fact, according to College Board, they want you to use private for instance fields. Do you remember what concept private access specifiers used for? Yes, encapsulation. That is correct. Now, dictionary is a type of book, and that's why it's a child, and that's why we can extend book to be a dictionary, and it's going to inherit whatever book had. Now, inheritance is a little bit tricky over here. You can inherit methods directly the way they are. You cannot directly inherit constructors, and certainly you do not inherit at all instance fields, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more if the videos that you watch didn't talk about it yet. So what is inherited over here? Let's say compute ratios. So the compute ratios, which I was wondering what that was before, is the number of definitions per pages. Um, is it using anything from the parent class over here? Hmm. Let's take a look over here. Let's go to the book. Set pages, get pages. No, it doesn't really do much. They are almost like pretty much independent of each other, right? So inheritance is not really that well demonstrated in this example. But that's the first one they use in the book, and that's the most simplistic of them. So then you're probably wondering what we use inheritance for then, right? Let's see if I included something more interesting going on over here. Yeah, I think this one is the one I wanted to show you. Let me, yes. Here's a different driver. Go to words 2. And in words 2, you have over here that I created object of dictionary 2. Blah, 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 blah. Let's take a look at what books 2 does. It's pretty much kind of this, very similar, right? But then we have the dictionary 2, which extends book 2. And I'm hoping that this will show, yes, it shows more how we make use of a parent class. So in this case, the parent class, which is book 2, let's go to book 2, has constructor. A constructor that takes as an argument the number of pages. When you have constructors in inheritance, the parent has to be satisfied before you satisfy the requirement of the child constructor. So in dictionary, we have over here 2 arguments, number of pages and number of definitions. So since it's actually extending book 2, then we have to satisfy the need of the parent constructor first. And we use the keyword super for that. And we pass that argument to it. So this is actually uh, related to the parent class, as opposed to this one is definitely uh, intrinsic to the dictionary class. So on this line, meaning supplying to the parent constructor an argument, should be the first line in the constructor of the child class. Let's see. Is there anything else that we take from the parent class? We have set pages, we have get pages. Still, it's very blah. There is not much to it. That's a good way to ease you into what do they call it, inheritance. So it's going to get a little bit more complicated here. So before we do that, let's go back and take a look at the bullet points I have over here, because probably you're going to encounter over here answers to the questions. But let me check that there is nothing on the top. Oh yes, there is something over here. So here's some very simplistic definitions, and definitely, as you can see, they are much more compact than what the book discusses. So inheritance is the process of deriving a new class from an existing one. So or sometimes you can call a child class a derived class, and the parent class is called a base class. So what is inheritance designed for? Well, actually, it's to reuse the code. You haven't seen much reuse of the code in this example, but you will soon see something a little bit more complicated, not complicated, more complex, in which it is the code is reused nicely. And then you have parent classes that are so general that it has the minimum, almost like a skeleton of all the children classes, and that's what we're going to call abstract classes. Abstract classes cannot create objects. They're only there to give an idea of what all the children classes should look like. Then the original class is called parent class, superclass, or base class. These are good names to know because it can show up in some of those more uh, insightful questions. Here's an interesting relationship that you're going to see, which is SR. So, for example, we can say a dictionary is a book. And so you're going to see these in multiple choice questions and for responses, um, things like that. So remember, this type of arrow, solid line, close arrow tip, refers to inheritance. And if I was going to associate this arrow to a, I don't know, an expression, or in this case, two words, it would be this one, is all. Because dictionary is a book. The child is a parent. Of course, it's like a parent, it's like a book. You can say that, but this is the shortest way to do it. So there is a reserved word, extends, and I think you saw it when we looked at um, dictionary. Dictionary is using extends right here, and that indicates that a dictionary is a child of the book. What else do we know over here? Yes, it's inheritance is a one-way street. So a dictionary is a book. A book is not a dictionary. Okay? What else is in the bullets over here? Visibility modifiers or access specifiers. Those are pretty much equivalent terms. All the methods, private methods and variables of the parent class cannot be referenced in the child class. That is correct. Reference means when you want it, you create a child, an object of a child class, and you want to access a method for the parent. If the method was private, you cannot access that information. And instance fields will always be private, so you cannot access them either. And that's why later on we're going to talk about shadowing. Anything that is public can be used in the derived classes. So make sure that it's only for methods so it doesn't violate the principles of encapsulation. Um, this is partially true. I wouldn't hold on to this information too much for the AP exam, but it's good to know in terms of what Java is able to do. Yes, encapsulation is a little bit tricky, but it's nothing that you have to worry about uh, the AP exam. Remember, we learn more than what the college would expect us to know, and that's why this information is here. We're going to concentrate on encapsulation because that's what college board is going to ask you for. So here's a list of modifiers, specifiers, um, or visibility modifiers or access specifier, whichever you want to call it. Public, visible everywhere, protected, sorry, private can only be applied to inner classes. So that means that it's only visible within inside the class. I don't think we had seen inner classes, so we should have one example. I mean, they're rare, but it doesn't hurt to know it. If you do not have a modifier, the default is package, which is kind of public, but the classes, beyond the classes that add in the project. Yeah, and here I specify this very clearly. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the super keyword. Super keyword allows you to go to, or allows you to access information or give information to the parent class. So you saw before in book 2 that we gave information to the constructor of the parent class. Where did I put it? Yeah. So book 2 has a constructor that requires an argument. number of pages. So if we're going to have a child of this class, like dictionary 2, the constructor, you must have a constructor that has to supply that the information from that the parent needs. And the way to do that is with the super keyword. Take a look at how it's used. Okay, it's very different than what you have seen before. Even if I didn't have any arguments for the child class, you have to have this constructor there. And that's the most typical error that you're going to get if you forget to do it. What else can I say about it here? Um, da, da, da. Yes, you can call the constructor of the parent with the super reference or keyword. Um, yes, there is a default constructor for every class. Um, and probably it's kind of blah, doesn't have much, but it will definitely call it, and all the instance fields will be set to the default, values like if it is a built-in type, it's going to be an integer is a 0, double 0.0, boolean is false, and strings and objects are going to be null. We're going to see how we can use super to actually reference methods from the parent class. And that's what it will take us to something that is actually pretty cool. By the way, you should know that I think inheritance is very interesting. I like it a lot. Fascinating. And there was something that College Board used to had in the curriculum, which was interfaces, and that was even more interesting. Something that you learned from last year, probably the first time that you were exposed, it was something called overloading, and that was when you have multiple constructors of the same class, they were just different in which way? Yes, correct. The argument list. You could do the same thing with methods. You could have the same method with the same name, but as long as the argument list was different, then the compiler would not complain. When we have inheritance, we can change the content of the methods that were inherited by the parent, and that's called overriding. It's going to allow you to add extra lines of code, extra detail to the method that originally was introduced by the parent. And you, as a child, you probably inherited a lot of stuff from your parents, and then you give it your own, you know, mannerism, color, I don't know, your own characteristics. And then you have shadowing. Shadowing happens when you try to use the parent instance field, which is not allowed. But for this, I like to talk a little bit more in a different video. A few more things. Um, what else can I say for now? Just take a look at this picture in which you have multiple levels of inheritance, and read a little bit about these bullets. It's a nice condensed version of what the book has and really touches up on what the essence of inheritance is and requires, and it allows you to do. Okay? I'll talk to you very soon.